So I'm Tina, I'm the director of the Randall Library, and I'm happy to be back hosting the next segment of Sustainable Stow. We took a little bit of a break last month, and in March I was hosting from California, but I'm happy to see the weather here is great again. So I'm really happy to introduce Rick, who will introduce tonight's speaker.
Well, hello, everybody. We have now passed a year of doing these programs from Randall Library, various programs, very glad to do them. We're beginning to provide a whole list, a place where you can go and pull down any of them on YouTube, thanks to Stow TV. And so Stow TV will put this show on YouTube too. So if you see something you want to see again tonight, or you want to make sure that somebody else sees, in a couple of days, we'll have the link to Stow TV, and you can see it in various places. So tonight we're trying to do topics that are appropriate to the time of year. So it's May, it's garden season. We're all thinking about plants and planting. So I don't even remember when I first heard or met Jean Devine, but we've had a number of conversations since then, and just wonderful ideas. She's in Belmont. She's her organization's called her business is called Divine Native Plantings, and she's an environmental educator, a coach on native plants, and a specialty landscape designer or installer. So, and I should also mention, she runs an environmental education program called Biodiversity Builders that empowers youth to make a difference to their futures by teaching them how to create and advocate for healthy, biodiverse ecosystems using native plants. I'm hoping we can see one of those programs out here someday. So yeah, it would. So anyways, Jean, please take it from here. Welcome, everybody.
Well, thanks for including me. It's exciting to think about what I can present and what impact this might have on you, because I have made meadows before. I'm in the Metro West Boston area, and often my projects involve the city, pollinator patches, sidewalk strips, sections near, a church, rain gardens, but not big open spaces like you have out in Stow. So I hope I inspire you to start little, go big. You can do little steps or huge transformations. So tonight we're going to talk about, whoops, oh, I did the wrong thing. Wrong button. 1 second, sorry about that. No, I don't want to share this. Done. We're going to go to slideshow. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
All right. So, the world is in a sad state right now. Climate change, war, inflation, humanity is crumbling, but you can do something that's hopeful, and that's gardening. And if you garden with intent, if you put the right plants in the right places, you can change the environment and for the good. And I'm a real advocate for nature-based solutions to many of these problems, not just to the loss of biodiversity, which is huge, but to climate change, to environmental injustice, to psychology. There's just so many ways that helping nature will help ourselves. So tonight we're just going to talk, I don't know the level of understanding, so I'm going to go a little backward and then go forward about why native plants are so critical. I'll talk a little bit about plant-pollinator relationships. They matter locally. You're in an area where you're surrounded by more open land than I am, and ecological restoration should happen everywhere. My backyard is a postage stamp, and it's a little ecosystem that I can have an impact on. You might have a big field. You might be part of an organization that owns a large back area fronting conservation land. Think about little things, little steps you can do in all of these different environments. I'll go through certain native plants. I'll go through them by size and by season. And then we'll talk a little bit about the steps that you can take. You don't have to change the world today, but you could do something that by doing it, you could just look out your window and it'll bring you joy and satisfaction. So I'm going to start with this film. This is Doug Tallamy. For those who know about why native plants are so important, you've heard of the name of Doug Tallamy. He's going to explain native plants and ecosystems better than anyone. So here we go.
Animals. Absolutely every animal on this planet gets its food directly from plants. Gets its food either by eating a plant or by eating something else that ate the plant. And that's because plants are the only organisms that can capture the sun's energy and turn it into food. The most important group of animals that take energy from plants and pass it to other animals are the insects that eat plants. We'll call them insect herbivores. And most insect herbivores are only able to eat a particular group of plants. We call that specialization. They can only eat the plants that they have co-evolved with because plants defend themselves with nasty chemicals, and it takes long periods of time for insects to develop the physiological ability to digest those chemicals. When we create a meadow, we are in effect restoring an ancient food web. This works best if we use the native plants that were originally part of that food web. We'd like to favor native plants because the insect herbivores that evolved where you want to put your meadow evolved in concert with those native plants. They have specialized on those native plants over many, many thousands of years, which have enabled those insects to eat them. Those same insects have no evolutionary exposure to plants that evolved in China or Europe. They won't be able to eat these plants. They won't be able to digest them. They won't even recognize them as food plants. So if you're creating a meadow, choose plants that are native to your area, the country. A good example of an insect that specializes on one group of plants because of that plant's chemistry is our friend the monarch butterfly. It eats milkweeds and nothing else because it's able to break down the nasty chemicals that are in milkweeds, but it's unable to digest any other type of plant. If we cut milkweeds down then, monarch larvae cannot crawl off and eat some other type of plant. So if we destroy the plants that these insect herbivores have specialized on, they will have nothing to eat and will be doomed to extinction. Stop and think about it. So many animals depend on insects for their food. All amphibians, for example, eat insects. So do many reptiles and rodents. And 96% of our terrestrial birds rear their young on insects. If we replace our native plants with non-native plants, then all of those animals won't have enough to eat. And that'll hit biodiversity very hard. And of course, that's exactly what we've done by creating lawns and landscaping with non-native plants that evolve outside of our local ecosystems. So remember what a meadow is all about. It's not just a beautiful place, but it's a place where things can live. Living things have two requirements. They need food and they need a place to live. Your meadow provides both. It provides food because of the plants that you put in your meadow. And if you put many different types of plants in your meadow, you'll have a diversity of food for a diversity of insects, and you'll have a diversity of natural enemies that will eat those insects. And the meadow provides habitat, hiding places, those little niches where the birds and the other meadow creatures can nest and rear their young. Planting a native wildflower meadow is so much more beautiful and dynamic, both structurally and in terms of species, than planting a monoculture such as a lawn. Somebody once said that gardening is a way of showing that you believe in tomorrow. And I think that's never been more true than today, because the way we garden, the way we create places like meadows is going to determine what life looks like tomorrow.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes,
No,
I'm
I
hearing
can hear you.
Just have to get back to the mode here. Anyway, I can't see other people, so for sure, do most know the name Doug Tallamy and all that he's published? Some do, but anyway, he keeps saying meadow, and in part, that's because that clip is an excerpt from a movie that was made by Catherine Zimmerman about meadow making. And that's really how I got involved in this whole world. Was I was teaching meadow making to students beginning in 2014. I'm a totally self-taught gardener, and had to learn these relationships. But what he is emphasizing is this is my teachery hat, that the food web that sustains all life starts with a chain, and the chain is very local. So this chain here is showing what we can't eat the sun to get our energy. We have to eat something that can photosynthesize the sun, and that's the producer plant. So this is showing the connection in a simple chain, but the chain is part of something bigger. It's part of a web, and the web includes all the different creatures that depend upon each other, not just for food, but also for safety and for shelter and for other things. So this was a typical web in our area, and the web is what underlies biodiversity. And by biodiversity, bio, that means life, diversity of life, we're looking at 3 levels: the species diversity within a web, the genetic diversity within each species, and the ecosystems diversity from one section to the other. So if you have a pond, you have a wetland ecosystem. Right next to woods, you have a forest ecosystem. So there are lots of different ecosystems that make up our towns and neighborhoods right where we live. This is, I substituted a drawing with what is a typical native plant at the base of the web, this foxglove. Problem is that this web is falling apart. It's falling apart because a lot of the insects are dying. And a lot of the insects are dying, and a lot of the birds and pollinators and plants, if we don't have the right plant and the right insect or pollinator in place, the rest of the system begins to fall apart. And he mentioned how dependent the other species are on the presence of that plant. The chickadee would rely on the plant to be the host to the caterpillar, so that the chickadee can pluck that caterpillar off the tree or the flower and bring it to feed its young. And it takes so many caterpillars to feed one brood. So you see your chickadees fluttering around the bird feeder, that's to get food for the adult, while they flutter around to get the insects to feed the young, so the young has protein. This is a quote: "Insects are the little engines that run the world." That was a statement made by E.O. Wilson, who recently died. He coined the phrase biodiversity. He was a professor at Harvard, but it's true. If insects were to disappear, and insects are also pollinators, or pollinators are also insects, most of our flowering plants would go extinct. The physical structure and energy flow of most terrestrial habitats would fall apart. All the other creatures, the frogs, the amphibians that depend on the plants and the pollinators, would also have no food, so everything would collapse. It's reckless to suppose that biodiversity can be diminished indefinitely without threatening humanity itself. We can't go on killing off our species. But why are they disappearing? I think you've heard, I just stumbled upon this data bank, but it just is striking that of all the species, all groups currently documented are over 2 million species. Half of that is made up of insects. And we really started to notice the precipitous decline in insects between the 1970s and today, based on citizen science performed in Germany by a whole group of different, so I don't know if you know this story, but all these different citizen scientists set up studies of insect mass in different fields all over Western Germany. And in 2013, their data plummeted markedly. And site 1 called site 15 and said, did you notice this in July, that, you know, I'm at half my level as I was a year ago, July? And he said, yes, I've seen that. And site 15 called site 95. They noticed the same thing. They had enough data collected across the 100 sites to publish in scientific journal, but the demise not only spelled the end of insects, but our birds are declining and other species that depend on them. So it seems that the insects are collapsing faster. This is all the negative stuff, but we're going to get into the pollinator. I mean, the positive pollinator stuff real soon. Why is this happening? Well, urbanization is fragmenting habitats. Deforestation is destroying homes for the insects and the birds, all the wildlife. Pesticides, somewhere along the line, we started to label our insects as pests, but most are beneficial. We're killing them off. Climate change, a bee emerges after the flower has bloomed, or vice versa. Things are out of sync. And then there's traditional landscaping. We've become enamored of our emerald green lawns, our leaf blowers, our ornamental plants that look pretty to us. They might even smell great to us, but to a pollinator, if they're not from this area, it looks like a plastic flower. There's nothing edible. Meanwhile, invasive plants are taking over and they're strangling our hardwoods. They're eating up space that natives could. So it's pretty dire. It's pretty dire. And you know what? Some of this is happening in Stow. It's happening in Boston. It's happening all over the world. But we might not be able to reforest, have an impact on reforesting the Amazon, and that's a disaster. But locally, we can change our ways. So here's what's happened. Too much lawn, too many invasives running amok. This is in the lower left, Japanese knotweed towering above the cyclists. And then, you know, going out and purchasing massive quantities of non-native plants, actually annuals that you have to purchase year after year just to be decorative, when you could fill that space with something delightful. So let's look at the relationship of native plants and native pollinators. Pollination. This is a cartoon from the New Yorker, and I get my students to chuckle over it because many of them are just learning these ideas. But plants don't exist for the eye of the beholder for humans. They exist to make more plants. So they want to be as appealing and satisfying to the pollinators, just to the point where they're pollinated, and then they tell the pollinator, go away. Don't come back anymore. We're done. So they either change color, they drop off their petals, they do something to discourage the pollinator from coming by. Meanwhile, the pollinator is just interested in the food, either the nectar, the pollen, or the host plant for its offspring. But it also wants to be efficient. So it doesn't want to keep going after a dead plant. So the fact that the plant has changed color or the petal has fallen off is good for the pollinator too. And then you get into a system, and this gets more technical, but just because a pollinator is visiting a plant doesn't mean it's really pollinating it. So we are trying to reinforce the system of plants and pollinators, the best relationships as possible to restore at-risk pollinators and at-risk or rare plants. So I won't get into this too technically, but it's a lot of fun. And my students love learning this, is how a design of a plant will attract a pollinator by color, its markers. You have the beautiful irises that are blooming now, and they've got a runway that says land here. Or you have anything in the aster family that has a big enough cone for a butterfly to sink its feet into. It needs a landing platform. Or you have a tubular flower, in this case, a white tubular flower that opens at night is appealing to a bat. But there are a lot of tubular flowers that fit the beak of a hummingbird or the tongue of a long-tongued bee, etc. So knowing which ones appeal to which pollinator is helpful. That's what the plants do. The pollinators, what are they doing? They're hunting around for food For them, the nectar is like getting sugar water when you're running a road race. They need that to fly about. But what the bees are really looking for is pollen, and they're looking for pollen to put in their nests. And they're particular. There are a lot of specialist bees that need a specific pollen to put in their nest. Most of our bees are solitary, so they set up and most of them are ground nesting. So the queen lays an egg and the workers go in and put in some pollen, a little bit of juice, they seal off the chamber. Queen lays another egg, they bring in the pollen, seal it off, there's another chamber. And this bee here is looking at a Monarda bee balm. There are tubes there that it can reach with a long tongue. So it's interesting that the shape is really important to a bee, which I didn't really learn for a while. In the middle, it's butterfly milkweed with the monarch. Doug Tallamy said how the monarch specializes in milkweeds. About 70% of our insects specialize on a certain plant. So if you bring in a plant for the specialist, the generalist will also benefit. The middle picture is showing what a plant is as a host plant. Those leaves are important for the caterpillar to eat. And of course, I mentioned the hummingbird before. So you want to get the plants for the pollinators and you're all excited. You come back for the store and you're really excited. You put the plants in the ground and you walk away. Well, they need more than that. They need the food. If you can put out water for a bee or a butterfly, that's terrific. Don't put out a bird bath for a bee, they'll drown, but you could put a little shallow dish with some stones in it, a little bit of water, and the bees will come in and get a little bit of water. The butterflies are known to puddle. So they might look for, after a rainstorm, something on a roadway, and they'll get their water from that, or from the drops of dew off grass, or perhaps the same little setup with the stones. They too can't go into your bird bath. Overstory, understory, this is building a habitat. You need to have all sizes of native plants, your trees, your shrubs, we'll get into that more, the grasses and the ground covers. And we've just come out of, a winter where probably everyone has vigorously raked in the fall, but it would have been better to leave the leaves everywhere through the winter, because a walk in the woods a month ago revealed to me a mourning cloak that had one of 2 adult butterflies that hibernate in winter, and it pulled out from under the leaves right in front of my feet. So it was great to have undisturbed winter refuge. Of course, no pesticides. Most insects are beneficial. And believe it or not, we have to remind people in the Boston area, maybe not so much out where you are, to use a specific kind of light if you need to light your back porch. Otherwise, your lights are distracting the moths and the evening creatures. Here's just a few examples of nesting sites, the ground bees, the ones that use wood, the ones that use the pithy stems of an old common milkweed or Joe Pye weed, those that wrap leafcutter bee or certain types of wasp will wrap themselves in leaves, or you have this little burr nest here. Back to who leaves the leaves. There's a lot of life that has been in those leaves, but it needs the winter before it can emerge. Winter refuge. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how you think of a habitat. And this is an illustration of what we are surrounded with. Before we settled here, this was all forest. And a lot of the plants that I'll recommend, especially those that are sun part shade and low, probably occurred along the forest edge. Or the spring ephemerals, which you've been seeing, the Mayapples, the Virginia bluebells, the Jack in the Pulpit, the Trillium, all of those would be in the forest, but close to where they could get some light before the tree leaves emerged. So when you want to think of your garden, think of it in the context of a healthy habitat or a healthy ecosystem. And Doug mentioned this, the diversity is critical. If you want to see more than just the monarch butterfly, then plant more than just the milkweed. Right now I'm seeing eastern tiger swallowtails flying around they do not specialize on one particular plant. They can benefit from about 8 species of trees, one of which is the non-native lilac. So that's one example of why you might want a lilac around, but I encourage you to go as far into the native plant as possible. Reduce grass. We all have, I have this very small house, and my husband gets the grass in the front and the whole garden setup is in the back. But I don't think we all need huge rolling lawns unless we're playing soccer or, frisbee. Otherwise, you can share some of your grass with the creatures. People love mulch. I don't know where that came from, except it benefits to keep the moisture in when you've planted a new tree and it's out in the striking hot sun, but you don't have to put a mound of volcano mulch on. It'd be better to plant ground covers all around it. And then when the leaves fall, combination of ground covers and leaves makes for a soft landing for a cocoon falling out of a tree. And then the other thing to build a habitat is get those invasive plants out of the way so you can grow the native plants. So I've mentioned this a few times now. I'm just going to pause here. I want you to think that I spent a lot of time working with youth to encourage them to get out in nature in the summer and plant these trees and then sit back and see what happened. And within days of planting a little meadow, the insects came, the birds came, the rabbits came, and the students were perplexed because we were in the middle of Waltham and they're thinking, how did that happen? Did they get the memo? Well, these creatures were probably nearby. A lot of the native species can't fly that far, but they could have been in a tree in the nearby cemetery. Well, that tree is also doing a lot for nature, providing us with cooling, atmospheric cooling in the summer. It's a great solution for these heat waves, providing the oxygen that we breathe. The roots are sequestering carbon. So it's performing many functions, not just serving the pollinators or serving as a host plant for pollinators. Meanwhile, the shrubs I love, they fill in spaces, but they have 2 bangs for your investment. They provide early flower for our pollinators and later berries for our birds. So you get to see the comings and goings of several species of hungry something. Plants and grasses, people might ignore the grasses thinking you can just go get these beautiful tall grasses at the local garden supply store, but they're probably not native and they're very decorative, but they're not food for an insect. So might as well go and get the tall grasses that will be food for an insect and shelter for wildlife. It also provides a structure to your garden and can support your other plants. Of course, there are many perennials that make up the native plants that feed the pollinators, the insects, the herbivores, and ground covers are so valuable. Many of them are host plants for butterflies and nectar for emerging bees. So this is what the native shrubs offer, the wildlife. So now I'm going to get into some of the plants that we could, and many are commonly accessible this time of year. Native plant enthusiasts have been ordering plants probably since February. And some of those plants are coming in from the middle of the country, Prairie Nursery, Prairie Moon. Many of them are the same as what is in our region, but there are several local growers and suppliers that are paying attention to our region's ecotype, and in particular, even this half of the state. And that is a treasure. If you can buy locally, I recommend you go to Native Plant Trust. Not only can you see a lot of the species for sale on a table, but you can walk among them in the woods and their sample gardens. So it's a beautiful area. There's another couple local places that do catalog ordering, or you can go and see them. One of them is Bagley Pond in Warner, New Hampshire. and a new one called Blue Stem Natives in Norwell. So let's get into, if you had space for only one thing in your yard, or budget for only one thing, but you're willing to spend a little, go for a tree. The trees are not only providing the shade, they are serving as host plants for Lepidoptera. So many of these trees are what we would call keystone species, and the numbers next to them are the number of moths and butterflies that are served by these trees. Oaks are the absolute best. Birches, and you have several species of birches. Willows, they get big, they get weeping, but you can do pussy willow as well. And anything in the cherry family or the prune family is a valuable resource to our pollinators. If your area is smaller, and we certainly consider this in the suburbs of Belmont, Arlington, we go for smaller trees, and many have been in bloom just in the last few weeks. The redbud, the serviceberry, although those do get to about 20 feet. But here, a pussy willow, again, it's in the willow family, so it serves many butterflies and bees. Witch hazel, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, that blooms in November. If you've seen one around, Boston Common had one blooming right after the February snowstorm. That was a cultivar of a native, cultivar or a nativar of witch hazel. Beach plum, in the ecoregion, Stow may not qualify, but Belmont does. This is more often seen close to the coast, but we are close enough that we fit within the region where the beach plum works. And red cedar, if you want to see cedar waxwing in your yard, plant a cedar, anything in the juniper family, and you'll see a flock of them come in on their way somewhere else. Some shrubs that are really valuable, the blueberries, high bush and low bush. And this is the number of species they serve. The serviceberry I mentioned a little bit earlier. Viburnums are terrific, but there are many non-native viburnums. And the one, if you smelled one about a month ago, really, really fragrant, that was probably Korean spice. The local viburnums are just popping out now. Maple leaf, witherod, blackhaw, there's just so many to choose from. Dogwoods are valuable from you've seen them blooming, the pagoda, the flowering, the big trees, but there's also this shrub. This is the red twig dogwood. It's blooming about now, and in the winter it sheds all its leaves, but the twigs are get even darker and redder, so it's a beautiful thing. The holly, this holly keeps its leaves. If you got the winterberry holly, it would shed its leaves, but has beautiful stems of red berry. Shrubby St. John's wort, there's several bushes of St. John's wort that would serve as a great shrub, foundation or in the middle of a garden. And the mountain laurel is a shrub that can deal well in shade. And this red twig dogwood also can be a shade. Has to have some sun, but can be in shade. So now I'm going to go through some of the plants that are good by season. Somewhere along the line, people got frustrated with violets and thought they should kill them, but they're very beneficial. They're the host plant to a fritillary. And they, I mentioned before, have wonderful nectar for any emerging insect that's trying to start out and get some energy. So here are the ones that would work in our region. I love the cream one. Other early bloomers, your zone might be a little bit different for temperature. This middle one is blooming in my yard now, the Zizia aptera. There's also Zizia aurea. These can grow to about knee high if they are in a place they're really happy. But they're also good as a ground cover if you have a pretty big space. Another great ground cover is, and an early bloomer, is the geranium, wild geranium. Once the flowers fall away, the leaves are really pretty. Other early, you'll begin to see these in June if we continue with the heat of this coming weekend. Yeah, they'll be on schedule. The foxglove beard tongue. These two types of beard tongues are really valuable for at-risk bumblebees, who in this case went right up and got his butt all the way up. The hirsutus is the flowers a little bit smaller than this beard tongue, but both are smaller than your traditional foxglove. This Samsonia is beautiful and has two benefits. The flower comes like a little snowball at the end of its branch, and it can grow quite bush-like. But the leaves are a golden hue in the fall. It's a wonderful contrast against some of your other orangey colors. I put this in gardens with the plant Father Gila, or Father Gia, which has beautiful, more rust-colored leaves in the fall. And I love the indigos. This plant is in the lupin family. It produces a flower that turns into, a pod, and it's a nitrogen fixer, meaning it provides extra nitrogen to the soil that benefits itself and neighboring plants. The one thing about this, it takes a few years to establish a taproot. So it gives all its energy to putting things down, deep roots down, and it won't flower for about 2 or 3 years. Here are the different types of milkweeds that bloom in July and are native to our region. These are placed in the order in which they bloom. First, you'll see the common milkweed. It's a great plant. It's aggressive, so if you put a few in your yard, be prepared for them to multiply. It's good in a field, great in a meadow, great along a roadside. My favorite of the three is the swamp milkweed. To me, it smells like marshmallow fluff. And anecdotally, it seems to appeal to the monarchs, the caterpillars, more than the common. I see more caterpillars on this than I do on common. And the butterfly is a great plant for dry sun, and it's lower, so you can put it in the front of your garden. Midsummer, can't go wrong with wild bergamot, Monarda fistulosa, this purple one. Any of these. This middle scarlet bee balm is favored by hummingbirds. Hummingbirds see red when many insects don't. So hummingbirds know there should be more treats in there, more nectar for the hummingbird, because they don't have to share it. This spotted bee balm grows a little bit lower than the other bee balms, but all of them are deterrents to rabbits, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more because they're in the mint family, and rabbits don't like mint. Don't know about deer, but rabbits don't like it. Comes middle of the summer, the first two on the left, all of these work in moist conditions. Joe Pyeweed gets quite big. I put it at the back of a garden or in the middle of a meadow, or in a rain garden. This family, Joe Pye, Eutrochium, or the boneset eupatorium, these work really well in rain gardens. And you can see a little bit, these are just bursts of flowers. Each one is a fluorescent. Each one appeals to the insect pollinator. So when it opens, it's like, the lobelias are wonderful. I like the blue. I haven't had much luck with the cardinal, but that makes sense. My yard is more dry. Great blue, lobelia. And the numbers here are showing how many insects benefit from the plant. Now we're moving into, continuing into July, into September. There are some roses that are native. The two for this region are Virginia and Carolina. And the Virginia grows more vertical, and the Carolina is a little more shrub-like. This turtlehead I love. Its flower looks like, as it's opening, it looks like the head of a turtle emerging from the plant. What is my lower? Oh, this is a flowering fruit, the blackberry, the flowering raspberry. These have a strong scent. Many of these, I don't notice a scent, but the insects do. And then the mountain mint appeals to a variety of insects, including some wasps and hornets. When you get into fall, you need to provide foraging for our insects and pollinators all the way till November. So goldenrod's a good bet. Goldenrod can be aggressive. I would avoid the canadensis. Even the rough one can spread pretty happily. I like the sweet goldenrod and the showy goldenrod. They're a little smaller and contain. Again, I'm working in a suburban area, but out in meadows, or if you're on the roadside, if you're doing a highway restore project, go for the canadensis. Go for these aggressive ones. Who cares? It's, you know, they fill the highway easily. And this one on the lower left, I just started working with this plant last year. It's the only goldenrod that can work in a shady area. It's shade tolerant, and the leaves are really pretty. Asters are hands down one of the best fall flowers to provide. And this whitewood one can grow in dry, shady conditions. So that's like perfect. And once it's there and happy, it'll let you know. Most of these asters could grow along a highway roadside. They don't need a lot of dithering with the soil. They can handle it quite well as just rough. They just need a little, they can't really survive compaction, but road salt, anything you throw at them, they seem to survive. And then grasses, don't forget, these are just a few. I love the purple love grass because it looks like 4th of July fireworks to me. The switchgrass and the Indian grass grow a little taller, as does the big blue stem. I don't have a picture of that, but again, it provides structure and support for the other plants in your garden and fall pleasure, because these will be turning colors into the fall. I leave them up. I don't cut them at all. Wait till the spring, see how they flop down, and then they start all over again. I mentioned ground covers are really important, and there's many to choose from. Pennsylvania sedge is one of the sedges that works well in shade. Wild strawberry is lovely for sun part shade. Geranium, is that geranium? It's a good one. Foam flower would be in our region, is just beginning to bloom. I love that after the blooms, which are quite delicate, the leaves are really pretty to look at. And ferns, there's so many to choose from, but don't do the Asian fern, I know, or the painted fern. You could do the same kind of statement structurally with all ostrich fern, cinnamon fern, royal fern, sensitive fern. So there's a lot to choose from in the native world. So what can we do? Where can we start? If we're just new to this or don't have much time, the little steps are really important. Say you bought a new house and you inherited some invasive plants. There's some ground covers that I always thought were okay. This periwinkle looks a little like a violet, but provides nothing to our insects. It's not recognized. So that is a plastic flower to the visitors. Ivy strangles everything, but I find it pretty easy to pull out, especially if you find one root to run. So you could start a garden just by removing these few ground covers and replacing it with good ground covers. There's even a native Pachysandra. These ground covers are a little harder to deal with. Garlic mustard, I'll take that back. That's easy to pull. And I don't know about Stow, but we're pretty much past the flower, or we may have a few flowers left, but our pullers were doing this vigorously, maybe since 2 or 3 weeks ago. This lesser saladine is a nightmare because it disappears after, it's an ephemeral. So after a little while, you can't keep track of where it has gone. So if you can get it out, do it in early spring. And if anyone has bishop's weed or gout weed and knows how to remove it, I'd love to know the trick to that, because I'm taking on a project that's flooded with this and I want to get it out before I replace it with a native plant. Some of the substitutes for the ones that were pulled, I mentioned a few of these before, but this phlox divar, this woodland phlox, this works well in shade and it's really pretty. This groundsel spreads really well. Once the flower has passed, you have there are two types, and little heart-shaped leaves make, just fill a carpet of green, and it's a kind of green. It's not the creeping Charlie kind of green or the creeping bellflower kind of green. This is the good green. You may have put this in, or you may have inherited this, but these are two of the worst shrubs going now, and we can't sell them in our state anymore. But they're around and they have beauty. Burning bush, you can remove both by sawing them off and then digging them out. But when you come to the Japanese barberry, it has thorns and it has ticks. So getting rid of that is a little bit harder, but it also has, both have berries. And the fact that they have something that a bird can eat and poop out somewhere else has made these spread in places that you would not imagine. Woods, conservation areas, a domesticated looking plant appearing in a forest walk is really striking, but I've seen it before. So that's why you have to get rid of it. Everyone thinks a butterfly bush must be good because butterflies are visiting it, but this is another invasive plant that spreads. Honeysuckle, there's a good honeysuckle, the Diversella lanicera or the sempervirens, but most people have the bad kind of honeysuckle. So it behooves us to get rid of it. And privet hedge, you could replace with an edible hedge. You could do raspberries or densely planted plants and shrubs, and you could achieve the same effect. Let's see, where are we? Sweet spire, Itea, New Jersey tea, Cianthus, sweet pepper bush, number of beautiful shrubs can replace some of the others that you just pulled out. But high bush blueberry is recommended as a direct replacement for your burning bush if you need or want that kind of leaf color in your yard. Our city streets are filled with these Bradford pear, and people go, well, it can't be invasive, it's just on the city street. Well, it not only appears in these wooded areas out here, but it is going back to its worst form. It was a crossbreed, grafted, two trees grafted together. I don't know if anyone saw the New York Times article last year, but the original tree was very thorny. And then the new version was not. Well, what they're finding in the woods are the thorny versions. So you want to go and remove it and you get stabbed to death. Here's some good substitutes. They're great crab apples. There are non-native and native. So of course, go for the native. There's an Oregon one that's become quite popular. The willows, the dogwoods. Can't see this lower right. Here's some, now we're going to go into another strategy, and that is what to do about all those rabbits eating your plants. Well, you could distract them by planting things along the edges that you don't mind them eating, or prevent them from finding their way into the wonderful other stuff. So these are some things that could grow along a path. The evening primrose, undisturbed, will grow 6 feet tall. But if you let it be eaten by a bunny, its second iteration will be much shorter. So you have a new version of that. Anything with a scent, so the mints, the mountain mint, these 3 types of mints are deterrent. So are all the monardas in the mint family. And this Agastache, the hyssop here is anise flavor, but the scent is a deterrent to our rabbits. Bee bombs, I just mentioned that. They don't like these grasses. And I'm beginning to think their tender feet don't like going on my fallen leaves, because I left a whole bunch of leaves in my garden, and they don't like hopping to the middle of the garden where the asters are. So they have left that alone. So what we really need to think about, and this is where it's hard, our generation may have inherited some ideas from our parents that you need to have a lush lawn in order to have your home be complete. Well, no, you don't. And there is a movement now of rewilding and introducing different textures and diversity that will appeal to all types of wildlife. So be bold. If you can't get rid of the whole lawn, get rid of a section or create this nice berm with the right kind of plant, native plant. The other thing you could do is make a bed that is native plants, and people go, oh, they get messy, they get carried away. Well, you could define that bed. You could, carve it out. You could put cobblestone. You could put a bird bath in the middle. I mean, there are a number of ways to define it. So it looks like it is a traditional garden. It's just filled with these beautiful native plants. And if you go so far as to embrace the native movement, put a sign out, and then passersby will understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. So your garden is benefiting everyone, and including educating humans about the value of something like this. Now it is time to shop. I can send a handout, but if you're sitting by your computer, these are good places to start to pull a list together. I have a handout where I can send you lists. The Audubon one's sort of fun because you put in your zip code and you can say what birds you want to appeal to, and they'll tell you what plants work for that. The wildflower.org, that's based in Texas, they do it by zip code, but they'll do all types of plant. And then there are a lot of organizations that provide templates with the package you might buy or separate. So it's nice to get an idea of where to put those plants if you're doing the whole thing yourself. Native Plant Trust, I mentioned that earlier. Yeah, so it opened up April 16th. They've been slammed with business. I understand last weekend people could not find a place to park. Grow Native we'll be having a sale in Waltham. If you want to come into town, you must become a member, and which is great, and you must pre-register, but they have a wonderful sample of plants. Bagley Pond, I mentioned a little earlier, Bluestone. Lincoln Conservation has pulled together kits to fill in certain circumstances, a wetland, a rain garden, a sunny, shady patch, all different things. I don't know if they're still selling. They may have already done that sale. There's a neat place in Western Mass called Wing and a Prayer. And the trustees for reservations have again, this appeals more to my close clients. They have a grower in Roxbury, quite a big tract of land considering how dense it is there, called City Natives. And I've ordered some plants I'll be picking up next week. Where else? I'm almost done. I just wanted to teach you a little bit about reading labels and focusing on pure natives. When you go to shop for a native plant, you should be seeing two words together, just two. The first is genus, two of the Latin words, genus and species. If you see something afterwards in single quotes like pretty lady or autumn brilliance or funky town, human has tinkered with the plant to create a clone of the best species within that species. So the purple coneflower is a great example because it's not even native to this area. It's really native to the Midwest, but people like to have that look and feel. And I will say it's not a powerhouse, but it does provide pollen and nectar, and the birds love the seed heads. So it is pretty, but it has been tinkered with to the point that the color is unrecognized by a lot of the pollinators, or the shape, this double the light one here, and it doesn't seem appealing to any of the insects coming by. Sometimes they're sterile. Sometimes they have absolutely no pollen or nectar. I mean, one of the reasons people have made cultivars is to accent the positive beauty without the hassle. So sometimes they get rid of the pollen, so it's really something to avoid as much as possible. And if you go to a garden shop and you say, do you have natives? And they point you to a whole bunch of these kind of flowers, say, no, those aren't natives. I want the straight species. And the more that people say that, the more that vendor will need to get on board and sell the native plants. What I'm really leading up to, or maybe I could have introduced this idea, is that all of us can do something positive for the environment in our own yard. I mean, we can't halt these emissions that are coming out of factories, or maybe we can, but it takes a lot of movement to do that. But we can do something right out our door, but we have to focus on a new way of doing gardening. Don't rake up everything and throw it away. Don't extend your garden as if it's a part of your living room and it needs to be a painted picture. Think of it as a little natural habitat. So instead of this lower left here, a beautiful emerald green lawn, you can be a little adventuresome and add some growing plants here. And instead of cutting everything in the fall, leave some twigs, leave some dead things. Let the ground cover mix with your leaves, you know. So there's some ideas of how to garden that go along with the plants that you select the right plants for the right place, and then practice healthy gardening. Manage what you put in, manage what you take out. So that is where I wanted to end. I'm open to question, but this always struck me, you waiting for someone else to do it. The greatest threat to the planet is the belief that someone else will save it. And no, we can do it ourselves. So thank you for inviting me. This is my new logo for my business. And this is my new logo for my education program, which kicks off in mid-June. I'll be teaching 16 high school students how to change the world. So I'm very excited about that. And now I'm going to open this up to questions.
Jean, you already have a question in the chat,
Okay.
which was excellent presentation. Do you offer a service to come to someone's home to do an inventory of their existing plant life and native plants that can replace the invasive ones?
I do everything from, you know, just walking around going, oh, that's blah, blah, get rid of that, or, you know, on up to coming up with the design and the plan for installing. I will say I'm quite busy right now. I have someone in Stow that wanted my advice. We're doing it by video. So that, not Stow, I'm sorry. Douglas, is Douglas near Stow, or is it further out?
It's further out.
Yeah, okay. So I said, why don't we walk through your property over Zoom? So we have a date to do that. So I do that kind of work. And I'm taking lots for next year, but reach me, I'll give my email and we could talk about it.
And I just put in a website that's a mass website. You mentioned in passing the problem with, you know, if we're trying to maintain biodiversity, you know, be careful what you spray, be careful what pesticides and so forth you use. And this is a site that Massachusetts, the state, has, where you can opt out. You can opt your property out of any aerial spraying or that street side spraying that covers your whole property that the state does for mosquitoes usually, you know, and I ask to be opted out every year. And I actually live on the edge of wetlands, and it's been fine.
Well, last summer we noticed a decline in bees. I mean, we've been noticing a decline for years, but people out in Southborough were saying that they saw a direct correlation between spraying for mosquitoes and bee decline. They have a study site in the Breakneck Reservation. So I don't know, it may have been anecdotal, but I worry about that. Yeah, I worry about spot spraying of dandelions. People think dandelions are good. Dandelions, keep them. It's no mow nay, everyone. I don't know if you're following that, but the dandelions not only feed some of the pollinators, but they're telling you something about your soil and they're trying to help it. They're telling you your soil is compacted and it's calcium deficient. So while they're there, their little taproot is drilling down and they're giving some nutrients to balance it out and to break up the compaction. So now when they get to the point where they're going to blow away, I guess you could pick their heads then, although you might spread them to somebody else. But and mayapple, yes, is native.
And then there's a question, is there a good database or website to help identify invasives? I'd say to help identify anything. I'm forever trying to use a new app, trying to identify something in my yard.
Yes, I could even put those links up. I use something called Picture This. They're pretty good. You can get the free version or you can pay $30 a year. They get a little confused on trees, but the rest they seem pretty strong. In iNaturalist, I don't know if you know that one. iNaturalist and Seek are being used to not only identify the plants, but also capture the data when someone takes a photo. So it knows your coordinates, so it knows what you're seeing. I see a nod, but there's a woman that's running this wonderful invasive removal program in Arlington. She calls it the Army Arlington Mass Invasive, so it's like ARMI, and she uses iNaturalist and has created a project there where people photograph invasives in all their seasonal form. So, right now, garlic mustard is, it's in two forms. It's in the flower, or it's almost past, and the little ground level. And then it ultimately, the ground levels stay until the fall, but then it completely disappears. Well, you've got bittersweet that's just emerging with a flower. Then, you're going to go all the way to the fall. You won't see those orange berries until it's almost too late. You got to get that bittersweet and the vines out of there. And if you see greenberry, that's the casing. Anyway, I'm digressing. Yes, you can use these as a way to identify the plant and also share information. What's another good one? Seek, Plant Finder, iNaturalist. I think that's it. Yeah. Oh, and someone just noted that the Seek app is free. And do you have experience with the Seek? Allison.
You'll have to unmute.
Yes, I do. It's sometimes accurate and sometimes it really gives a very general thing, especially for trees.
Yeah. Okay. Suppose the more we use these, the more we could train them to be better. What do people out in Stow grow both the native perennials and edible gardens? Because the two work together well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of vegetable gardeners in Stow.
Yeah.
And there's also some commercial vegetable
Commercial
growers.
Well, those who grow commercially, blueberries, cranberries, they benefit from having native plants nearby, because the bees, I think we were talking about that, they need buzz pollination and the honeybees don't do that. So yeah, that's a nice compliment. Someone said they planted a pollinator patch in the middle of their garden with a native seed mix. Yay, that's daring, that's terrific. And how's it growing? That's Mark Arbones. Oh, he has to tell me. I don't know if you've thought of conservation land and how to work with people to, if it's managed locally, we have DCR, and they're trying to be more mindful of pollination systems and pollinator packages. But I'm working on a project where there was a garden that people put in without permission, and now we have to backtrack to get permitted. for the native plants that are in there and the invasives that we want to remove. So,
In Stow, the Stow Conservation Trust has a thing that they call the stew crew, the stewardship crew, that goes around and manages the paths. I think the Conservation Commission does some of this work too. And they go after invasives. You know, right now, in fact, just last week, I think in the paper, there was an article about pulling mustard, wild mustard, and they were after that. So they've been trying to beat back the invasives in the various forest areas that we own.
it's great. Yeah, I mean, who would have thought that they'd take over as they have? But if we don't address the viney ones, they'll strangle the hardwoods, right? And if we, you know, I used to think that they were just a sort of nuisance in the yard, or, you know, but yes, they are. They're opportunistic. They often emerge earlier. They take up space for where a native could be, but there's several that leave, you know, a toxin there or make it inhospitable to other plants. So this woman from Arlington is compiling a list of good replacements. But for garlic mustard, I've read that the groundsel is a good replacement. It can sort of fight the toxin that's been there. So that's good. Any truth that common milkweed deters bittersweet? I don't know. That's a great question. Does anyone know that?
Could it outcompete? Grow
Yeah,
fast?
I've got a ton. You know, I made the mistake, my garden's small, of putting 2 in, and now I've got 20, and I want to share them, but they're getting like that heat wave. They were this big, and now they went like this over the weekend. So
Oh, there's a note on this. Yeah, Friday is, and I heard of this earlier from Marcia. Friday is World Bee Day, something like that.
oh,
And
oh
on
my
Friday at
God.
noon, GBH has a program, Ask the Experts on honeybees. It's a virtual event. You have to register, but it's free.
Mm. Well, probably, I don't know how many listeners might even be beekeepers. I'm not enamored of honeybees. Part of that is that, I mean, they're really good for industrial agriculture, and I do like to eat almonds and apples and cherries, and, you know, so they definitely added to that. They do take and access a lot of the plants that our native bees need, and they can fly for foraging anywhere between 4 and 7 miles. So they have that advantage where many native bees have a short range. The mason bees, the sweat bees, really short range, like 300 feet, 1/4 of a mile. So I'm part of a movement to create a pollinator pathway in our region. I'm a co-founder of the Mystic Charles Pollinator Pathway Group. And I think you saw this, Rick. We mapped existing native plant gardens on a Google map. And from a distance, it looks like there are a lot of them. But when you zoom in, they're not that close together. So we need more in between to provide foraging opportunity for some of the native bees. But a lot of city dwellers, urban, suburban dwellers have honeybees. So those honeybees are going after the same things we're planting. Oh, and any advice for Asian jumping worms? Well, this is a new one for me last fall, and all my peers are just up in arms about it. The rule is if you're digging something out of your garden and you want to give it to someone, you have to rinse it down to bare root. You have to get that water out of there. You could even do one last rinse onto the cheesecloth to see if there are any cocoons. They're very small, like the size of 1/4 of a peppercorn. And then to plant it into a pot, you need fresh soil that you've purchased that you know has been cooked to a certain degree. So it's really tedious. Once you find them, I don't know what you do. you dig out the plants that are there? You can identify them by taking a mixture of Coleman's mustard, like it's 1 part Coleman's to 10 part water, and you pour it on the surface of where you suspect there are Asian jumping worms. And if they writhe like a small snake, and they have this pronounced white band, the clitellum, you've got a jumping worm. They're a little bit longer, but what do mason? It's awful. It's scary, and they will be at their largest in the fall. So right now they're just emerging.
There's a clear segment, a clear description of the problem and some things to do. It's a short segment on last week's Living on Earth, which comes from WBUR, and you can find it, of course, on the web. And it might be worth listening to.
Thank you. I love that program, but I didn't hear it. What do mason bees prefer? You know, that's a good question. I know the penstemon, the hirsutus is one, but I don't know the other plants. It would have to deal with its, I'm not going to guess, but it's a great question. And if I find the answer, I can send this to you, Rick, to share with your audience.
Right. Yeah, we do get, I think Tina can correct me if I'm wrong, but I we get, because we register for this, we do capture enough emails that we could send something back out.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely send that to you, Rick.
Great.
Great. Are human-made homes for bees, particularly mason bees? That the jury is out on these hotels, bee hotels. They look cute in yards, and people like to make them. But they sometimes attract wasps and other insects more than and a certain kind of wasp. So I don't think they're as valuable as providing, a little hideaway area, a snag, a dead tree, a log, a leaf, but or carpenter bees like unvarnished wood, but do you want to sacrifice, your roof line for that? I have a frame that's holding up a heat pump, and I should have painted it because the bees have come back and they've built a nest in the wood. And I don't know what happens when I turn on I haven't turned it on yet, the air conditioner part of that heat pump. Will the vibration frighten them? So. No, you don't want to. So I think most of the bee aficionados say let nature be their home, but if you don't have enough space for that, I would try that hotel.
So it's getting to about 20 after the hour. Does anybody have any last questions? Don't want to let Jean have some part of her night. Any other questions before we wrap up for tonight? Just some appreciation.
Well, thank you. It was
Yeah.
a pleasure. And I'd love to come out and see some of these areas of Stow. I did some consulting in Sudbury, and you just have so much more land out there than we have here. So it's.
But I do think we need to pick up your idea of pollinator pathways and have a variety of pollinator gardens across, and know that they're pollinator gardens across the town.
I think you should. And I'll tell you, we were inspired by what this group in Western Mass did called Western Mass Friends of Bees. And they started, for this state, they started the movement. And then we had heard that a place in Beverly was starting a pathway, and maybe Milton, but not many others had done it when we came together in July of 2020. And it was really based on, I was giving a presentation in my town that other towns attended, Sustainable Belmont had other towns come. And I wanted to get more momentum around the idea instead of doing just one garden at a time. And so this one woman said, why don't we have a tri-town challenge? It was going to be Arlington, Belmont, and Lexington. And out of that, that gave birth to a pathway. So yeah, you should try it. It would be a fun movement.
That would be great. Well, thank you. Thanks, everyone. Oh,
Thank you very
yeah.
much.
Lisa writes, I think Maynard started one next to the old school, and that's absolutely right. They did.
Oh, okay.
And I believe it's still in existence.
Hmm.
But we need a chain of them. They can't be that far apart.
Yeah.
So I think we're done. Tina, any last
All right.
words? Yeah.
I was just going to say thank you to Rick and Jean for hosting tonight and for everybody who came. I was even listening tonight and I thought it was great.
Thank you. Thank
You
you.
mean you don't? Always?
Always, but there's certain ones that pique my interest more than others. You can understand that.
That's great.
Sometimes I go too fast through the plants. but
No, not at all. It was very, very great. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you all.
Have
Good
a nice
night.
summer planting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.